Matthew, it's an absolute pleasure to talk with you, man. I'm a huge fan of so much of your work, and this movie was a blast.
Well, thank you. First of all, what is your figure there behind you? I can't quite
Uh,
see.
I've got it's just a Spider-Man pop figure. I'm in a hotel room in LA right now. All my Kingsman stuff is at home. I've got
Oh, don't worry. I just like to know, which character.
well, I've got the tie. I should have brought it with me. I've got the full official Kingsman tie. I went to the store in London a few years ago, and I was getting ready for today. I was like, yeah, if you're ever going to wear it, today's the day. And here I am, traveling without it.
Don't
But
worry. Don't worry.
but it's a pleasure to speak with you, sir. And what I really like about the Kingsman is I really feel like you had a World War One story that you wanted to tell, and Kingsman was the story that let you set that loose. And you have like scenarios and story beats that really rely on the story of World War One, and you make your own way with that. I'd love to hear about why you wanted to take Kingsman back to that era to begin with.
Basically, I rewatched a movie called The Man Who Would Be King. I don't know if you've seen it. If you haven't, you're in for a treat. And that had everything in it that I'd forgotten about in filmmaking. Everything I loved: epic, adventure, history, great characters, sadness, pathos, as well as humor, action. It had everything. And I was like, why is no one making movies like this anymore? And I said, why don't we make The Man Who Would Be Kingsman? And then that went up on the wall. We wrote it up, and then I said, well, okay, how are we going to do this? And then we remembered the Harry describing to Eggsy how Kingsman was founded. I said, okay, well, there you go. Here's the speech. Put that on the wall. And then I said, okay, World War One. I was a terrible student at school. I better start reading some books and stuff about World War One. And then I was like, wow, this stuff is unbelievable. And then Rasputin, and so then we put the timeline of that, the timeline of Kingsman, and then interweaved the whole thing, and I get to sort of make an epic adventure film, as well as, explore my favorite little movies called The Kingsman.
I love it. I love it. I'll say, I'm sure you hear this all the time. That continuous shot, the church scene in the first Kingsman, is such a signature action thing that my favorite things you've ever done. And this one, you got to flex totally different muscles, like sword fighting and a different form of like hand-to-hand combat. But you keep the Kingsman, like the tone, the wit, the sarcasm, and the stylish action in its own way. I loved, what kind of challenges did that create, doing like a different form of combat that isn't really gunplay necessarily, like you've done in the previous films?
Yeah, well, when you're going to, yes, you go sword to go, oh, wow, how are we going to do this? So we went back and we looked at all the Errol Flynn movies and stuff. And I was like watching these guys fight. And I'm like, Jesus, this is amazing. It's just doesn't translate as well because the camera's just there. You're just watching it. So we said, well, if we can get in with it. And we started looking at that choreography. And then, I did some research and we found, swords which had guns put into them. And then, with Rasputin, I started reading about Cossack dancing and the ballet dancing and how Cossack dancing was like a karate and it became dancing because it was banned as a style of fighting. I'm like, great, that's it. So Rasputin's going to dance and fight, Oxford's going to, and then I wanted to go back to those big adventure movies of, the biplane and everything going wrong and then slip some Kingsman stuff in it. But the limitations becomes the challenge. You go, okay, but in the end of the day, I don't care what anyone says, you can have a sword fight or you can turn them into lightsabers. They're still a bloody sword, but one glows and has a very cool sound effect on it and the other doesn't. So, it's all the same ultimately.
Yeah. I know you worked with Daniel Craig years ago on one of your first films you directed, and I was watching this, and that had slipped my mind. I was watching the movie, and I was watching Ralph Fiennes as Orlando Oxford, and I felt like he was almost paying some homage to Bond in his outfits and in his style. Was that intentional at all, that Daniel became Bond, and you have a character who's kind of playing something a bit similar in his role?
Listen, I think Rafe 20 years ago would have been an incredible Bond, by the way.
I mean, after this, I think he might still be good now.
Yeah, well, you know what? Never say never. But Rafe, yeah, I mean, look, Bond is obviously a huge influence on me. I remember when Daniel got cast, and I remember we having a drink, and he said, I'm going to be, well, actually, I hadn't decided to say yes, but he said he'd been offered Bond, and I was like, wow, amazing. You know, it was so bizarre. Great for him and for the franchise. And you know, and yeah, I loved Bond. I loved the books. I loved everything about Bond, and I always have. I'm a Bondaholic. I haven't seen the new one yet because I've been busy making another film, so I just haven't had the time. And I'll watch it over Christmas, and I can't wait. But yeah, I mean, look, Kingsman is sort of a, you know, it's got Bond in it. It's got the Avengers, as in the old Avengers. It's got Sapphire and Steel. It's got, you know, all these things. The Prisoner. All these things. You know, the Persuaders, Man from U.N.C.L.E. I grew up on this stuff. I fucking loved it. It just sunk into me. Here's probably a bit of Raiders of the Lost Ark. I couldn't help it. You know, a bit of indie. It's got every. I'm just a product of all these movies and stuff I grew up on, and it just seeped into me. And I try to take all these things that I love and repackage them.
Right. Well, listen, I love that you have so much passion for these other projects. And actually, there's a film that me and a lot of fans have passion for. Another movie you've made, which is X-Men. First Class. Everybody, a lot of people think that's one of the best X-Men movies, and I'm so curious of what you think.
I'm only hearing that at the moment. I didn't know that, but thank you.
Listen, there's a lot of us who adore that film and love what you did with that film, and I would love to geek out with you on that for a second, because like now we just kind of assume the X-Men are due for kind of a reboot now that Disney, Fox, and all that with the Marvel Studios. Do you think is that something you would ever go back to? Like, is there more meat on the X-Men bone if it was like a fresh take, or do you think your time in that world is fulfilled you?
I think if any character I would like to reboot and be part of the reboot on would be Wolverine. I think doing the young Wolverine would be, for me, I didn't get to play that character as much. I mean, I worked with Hugh, and that was fantastic, and he was brilliant. But I think, yeah, if one was asked what character would be the most exciting to be involved with, I think the young Wolverine would be pretty cool.
Put Taron in there. I'm begging you. You think? Well, do you have any plans to revisit Taron and Eggsy in the near future?
Oh, yeah, no. September next year we'll be filming it. It's
nice.
all ready to go. Yeah, it's all ready to go. Yeah. There's a lovely conclusion to the Eggsy Harry story.
I love it. Well, listen, man, I could talk with you all day about this. I got to let you go on to the next. So, Matthew, thank you so much for the time. Congrats on another great one. And I'll talk to you soon.